Hello and welcome. You are about to watch the Staff Wellbeing presentation from the Wellbeing Education Resilience Programme. We'd like to draw your attention to the Face COVID video by Russ Harris. If you haven't already watched it, do take the time to have a look. It gives a great overview of how to support wellbeing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. You can click on the link below on the accompanying PowerPoint presentation when it's in slideshow mode.
This is the third video in the Watch element of the WER programme. It focuses on staff wellbeing. There may be key concepts that are touched upon briefly in this video that are explained in more detail in the concept index video. These are marked with a blue star with CI in the middle. Should you want any further information or have any questions on anything covered in this webinar, you can book onto one of our Q&A conferences. Within this webinar, the following topics will be covered: recognising the importance of staff wellbeing and possible risks for school staff, developing positive relationships and wellbeing, allowing time for reflection, promoting strategies of regulation, building resilience. If you see the symbol of a thought bubble with activity in the middle, please pause the video if you wish to take time to do the suggested activity or reflection. Whilst watching this video, please ensure you are being kind to yourself. If you feel the need to pause or stop the video and take a break, please do so. You may also feel the need to reach out to a friend or family member. If you'd like to seek further support, there are some suggestions on the final slide. You can also speak to your school's mental health lead and they can contact your practitioner from the School Wellbeing Service.
We acknowledged in the whole school approach presentations that senior leaders have a role to ensure that their staff within their college and school settings are being supported with their wellbeing. And we talked about the values and mindset of compassion and kindness, of hope and connection and belonging. We recognise that in current times with the COVID-19 pandemic, that it is a real challenge to keep staff feeling connected when people have to be physically separated and practicing physical distancing, working in separate bubbles or working from home, working in school. So it can be quite difficult, but we are hearing lots of inventive and creative ways in which school staff and college staff are keeping connected, are keeping in touch with one another, checking in on one another, raising morale, sharing stories, spending time together. So it's nice to hear that. So whereas those previous videos were really aimed at school leadership to be thinking about their responsibilities, this presentation is focusing on individual members of staff and our own responsibilities and ways in which we can take care of ourselves and think about supporting one another too.
So in order to really understand our mental health, we need to look at the mental health spectrum. This is the idea that we all fall along this spectrum and it's our state of being at the time. So we've got at one end, we've got our poor state of well-being or poor mental health, and on the left side, the green side here, we have our state of good well-being or good mental health. So someone on the good state of well-being side of the spectrum, they will be able to realise their own potential, they'll be able to cope with normal stresses of life, and they'll even be able to sort of push themselves further, able to contribute to the community or fulfil themselves more so in life. Those on the poor wellbeing side of the spectrum, they may really struggle with their thinking, have very negative thought patterns. It will affect their behaviour and their ability to carry out daily tasks. It might affect their relationships as well. So we all at parts of our life will fall somewhere along this spectrum. We may at times fall at the very end of poor mental health spectrum, but it may be that actually we are able to take ourselves out of that side of the spectrum quite easily, quite quickly, and that's fine. That will just be periods of low mood. So we can fall along the spectrum at any points throughout the day. It may be that we go to work one morning really happy, and actually someone makes a comment that might really wind us up, and then we're falling further along the poor mental health side. It doesn't mean we're right at the end of the spectrum. We might just be moving further along it than we were in the morning. And that's absolutely fine. This happens to all of us throughout our lives all the time. It may be that we're sort of stuck in that poor state of well-being for a few days. This might just be a period of low mood, and again, totally normal. We all experience that. I'm sure we're experiencing that at the moment during lockdown and the COVID-19 epidemic. If we're stuck in that state for longer than 2 weeks, that is when we need to be sort of seeking some sort of support, whether it be therapeutic or medical. So what moves us along this spectrum are called risk and protective factors. Protective factors are things that create more of a positive emotion, feeling or thought, and they'll push us towards a good well-being side. And we have our risk factors that are things that create more of a negative thought, feeling or emotion, and they will push us more to the poor well-being side. These are explained further in the concept index. So if you'd like to take a look at those, you can pause the video now and take a look at those. In order to look after our children, young people's well-being, which is what we're really being asked to do, especially at the moment, it's really important that we're actually looking after our own well-being first. If we're looking after our own well-being, we are more patient, we're able to think more rationally, and we're able to face those challenges in life much better. If you think of the well-being spectrum that we just looked at, these are all qualities that are key in working with children and looking after them and making sure that they are happy and healthy.
When adults work in schools and colleges, building relationships is crucial to learning and development. And it's about far more than just teaching the subject that they're there to teach. It is about how to build that rapport and get to know the children, young people that they're working with and teaching. Although this can be extremely rewarding, it can also impact on staff personally as well. We know that you can absorb emotions and feelings of others around you, particularly if other people are, expressing or processing quite distressing feelings. And sometimes we're coping with our own vulnerabilities in our own lives, and this can impact sometimes on how we're able to do our jobs within schools and colleges too. Given that the situation at the moment with the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been an ongoing level of uncertainty and various changes that have taken place. And we know that there have been additional stresses and worries, constant changes in school arrangements and safety features. So thinking about staff wellbeing and thinking about this for all of your staff members of the colleges and schools that you work in, not just teaching staff, but all the staff, office staff, caretaking staff, building staff, everybody who works in your school community. We know that school staff have been so dedicated and have been working absolutely relentlessly. So this is a great time to be thinking about how we can support them and make sure that they are well. If these kinds of pressures and things go unrecognised and unacknowledged, it can really compromise the professional's ability to work effectively and to remain well emotionally and physically. And within your schools and colleges, there'll be formal and informal support systems in your school. School ethos really promotes looking after one another as well. So how is your school ethos? How okay is it to ask for support? Is there trust within yourself and within your school or college that you could share thoughts and feelings safely? Do you feel thought about by other members of staff? These are kinds of questions to reflect on, and hopefully some of the slides that you'll look at in this presentation will help you to think some of these things through. There are lots of different pressures that can lean on us at times, either at work or at home or elsewhere in our lives. So what we'd like you to do is to have a think about, and this is an activity for you to do if you'd like to consider what are the pressures or stresses on you which may affect your emotional well-being. And these could be pressures or stresses at work, or they could be pressures and stresses elsewhere. Okay, so if you want to take a couple of moments to do that activity, you can pause the video now.
So this is just a fun slide with a little bit of play on some of the thoughts that only somebody working in education has had and will understand. If you just take a few moments just to look through those, hopefully they'll provide you with a little bit of a smile throughout the training session. So this is looking at the idea of our life being a juggling act and all the different balls that we have to juggle in order to just keep it going. Different things will come along in life that will make the juggling act harder. Those challenges, for example, at the moment we've got lockdown, we've got COVID, we've got social life being harder. So that will be the equivalent of maybe someone putting a blindfold on us and making that juggling act much harder. I'd probably actually describe the current situation as wearing a blindfold with giant juggling balls set on fire. You know, it's really hard. It's really hard how we're supposed to look after our children's well-being if we can't see them, if we're doing virtual classrooms. How are we able to look after our home and family life if we're working from home, if you've got children that you're having to home educate whilst working? And social life, what kind of social life do we have at the moment? It's really hard. So trying to look after our well-being will make this juggling act slightly easier. We'll give you more ways of how to do that a little bit later on in the webinar.
Here are some results from a wellbeing survey that the Anna Freud Centre and Schools in Mind completed in November 2018. They asked the question, have any of the following caused you to feel stressed or unhappy at work over the last 2 weeks? And have a look at the kinds of percentages there and think about your own last couple of weeks and think about whether or not your pressure points or stress points have been similar or different. I guess this is might be different because of the COVID-19 pandemic that we're currently in. But generally, when we think about these kinds of stresses, they can give a similar picture across school and college communities. Most of you will be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the fact that we're motivated to fulfill our basic needs before we move on to the more complex ones. And as you can see along the side there, it talks about basic needs, emotional needs, social needs, and then personal growth needs. So we move from our basic to our more complex at the top. And that's a fairly familiar model for most people. This slide looks at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, actually puts it into a school or college setting, and to think about at each level of the hierarchy what the school system can be providing in order to ensure that staff's needs are met at each level. William Glasser was an American psychiatrist, and he talked about how our 5 basic needs for survival, love and belonging, power, freedom and fun were the basis for our well-being, and that in order to feel okay and to be emotionally and physically healthy, we would need to have these needs met. And that he believed that we got these needs met through the quality of relationships and connections that we have in our current lives. This slide allows us to have a think in more detail about Glasser's basic needs. And the most important need we have is the need for survival, because if we're not alive, then the other needs won't make a difference to us anyway. Following on from survival, the other 4 don't have a particular, it's not a hierarchy, the same as Maslow's, so they have kind of equal footing. The idea of being free and having freedom is about our autonomy, about being able to make choices, to be free from certain things, to be able to be free to do certain things, and to be able to make our own choices and to assert our independence. Our idea for love and belonging is to feel respected, to feel as if we're wanted and we're needed, that we can work together with other people, we can be part of something, and that's really important to feel. The power need is the one that's most relevant to education, in the sense that it's not the kind of normal power seeking, like, wanting to be in charge or being bossy. It's not that kind of power. It's more about the power of skills and of knowledge. So William Glasser said, the more stuff that you can do, the more skills you've got, the more stuff that you know, knowledge that you have, then the more powerful you are. Because basically, if you can do things and you know things, and you know how to find out things, then you can pretty much do whatever you want in life. So that helps you to become very powerful. So our ability to learn, to study, to work with other people, to gain recognition, to be successful, to feel like we're achieving in knowledge and skills, and to do the things that we want to do in life, that's our kind of need for power. And our fun can be one that's neglected quite often. Adults particularly kind of sometimes forget the need for fun in their lives, but the need for laughter, to enjoy something where our sense of joy comes from, what makes us laugh. It helps to soothe us, it helps to energize us. So having fun, we can do lots of learning, things like that. Is really, really important that we do have time and we spend time within our relationships having some fun. So an activity for you is to think about experiences and relationships within your school community and how your school community helps you to meet each of these 5 needs. And is there any barriers that exist within your school or college community that get in the way of you getting any of these needs met? Okay, so if you want to have a think about that activity now, then you can pause the video for a moment or two. When we're thinking about our 5 main human needs, we can sometimes use analogies like coffee cups or flower vases to visualise how much our needs are filled or fulfilled, or whether we're lacking in any particular ones. If our coffee cups are running on empty, we may sometimes behave in ways to try and get our needs met and fill our coffee cups up more. And sometimes we might not realise which coffee cup is running on empty. We might try and fill up a different pot, a different cup, and overfill that one perhaps, still not realising there's a particular one, a particular area of need that we're not fulfilling enough to make us feel okay. So we get our needs met through our social relationships, the connections and interactions that we have with others. And the cups don't have to be full to the top, they don't have to be brimming. They just need to be evenly balanced. So it doesn't matter how much you've got in your cup. It's more about them being balanced out evenly, that we do have some of each of our 5 needs met in order for us to feel okay. And when we're not feeling okay, it might be helpful for you to think about the relationships you've got at home or at work and how they could support you to get these needs better met.
So we've talked a lot in this webinar about what is wellbeing and the importance of looking after it, but we haven't yet discussed how you can do that. Well, there are 5 quite simple ways. They're called the 5 ways to wellbeing. These are what we would suggest for you. You can do them all the time. You don't have to be feeling low. These are things that are really important for you to be doing all the time in order to prevent that poor wellbeing, or just to keep you along that positive side of the spectrum. They are connect. This is looking at connecting with other people, in being sociable and just having those personal connections. We have be active. This is as it says on the tin, keeping active, being physical, exercise, etc. Take notice. This is about just taking notice of the world around you, being in the moment, in the here and now, and just taking stock of how you are and how you're feeling at the time as well. Keep learning. So this is about stretching your knowledge. It could be learning new skills, it could be challenging yourself, putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, learning what your real limitations are. And give. This is about giving to yourself, giving to others, taking the time to just give part of yourself to someone. It could be something as simple as giving a hug. I know we can't do that at the moment, but it's that charitable nature.
we have an activity for you to think about the 5 ways to wellbeing and how things are going in your own life. So if you'd like to do this activity, grab yourself a piece of paper and a pencil or pen and just sketch out this table so that you can use it for the next 5 slides. You can make some notes as you go through the rest of the presentation about the ways to wellbeing. So as you go through each of the 5 ways, I want you to think about things that you're already doing, if there's something that you do already in that section, and if there's anything that you spot that you think you'd like to try that you haven't tried before, or things that you could just do more of. If you don't want to do the activity in terms of writing them down, then as you look through the slides, just try and have those 2 questions in mind to reflect on. Which of these things do I already do, and is there anything I'd like to try or do more of?
So these are some ideas of how you can take notice. You can go for a walk and just take in your surroundings. So this isn't about the exercise of the walk in take notice. It's about really noticing your surroundings, what's around you, what can you hear, what can you feel. How are there people there? Is it things that you've noticed before? Are there any changes in your surroundings? How do you feel when you're in that place? We've got mindfulness. So you can do this using apps, you can just do it on your own. Mindfulness is about just taking stock of your thoughts, feelings and emotions. How are you thinking? How are you feeling at the time? And do you need to change any of those thoughts? Do you need to challenge any of those thoughts? Guided meditation, again, you can do this via apps, you can do videos on YouTube, you can try it yourself. This is about just settling your thoughts. If you've got lots of thoughts whirring around, you may need to do a bit of mindfulness to recognise it first. It's just, calming your thoughts, calming your brain. We have breathing techniques. Breathing techniques are really important in calming the part of your brain that controls your emotions and your fight, flight, freeze response. So they're really, really important. You can Google these, there's lots online, and you can use different breathing techniques for different things that you might need. And using your senses, this is what we call grounding. So by using your senses, your thoughts might clear, things, anxieties that are around you, by thinking about what you can hear, what you can see, what you can feel, smell and touch and taste. It just brings your focus internally and brings your focus into yourself rather than everything else that's going on around you. We have ideas for give. So this is about your charitable nature. So you can just give time to listen to someone else who might need to talk. You can give a hug, obviously social distance adhering, you can't really do that at the moment, but maybe your children who you live with might need a hug, that's fine. It could be that you want to just give time to yourself to do something that you enjoy. It may be that you just want to have half hour in the bath, and so be it, that's what you want to do. You could give a letter or a card to someone. It might be a motivational letter or a postcard or just a nice note to say that how grateful you are of someone or how much you care for them. You might want to donate to charity, or you might just want to give someone a helping hand. So ideas for being active. So we tried to keep these as COVID-19 friendly as we can, as at the moment obviously gyms, you're not necessarily able to go to the gym. So we thought about going for a walk or a run, doing some housework. Housework actually does burn lots of activities, just anything that gets you off of the couch and moving around. You've got exercise challenges, there's lots of challenges that you can find. I know there's things like squat challenge, etc. You've got online at home workouts, so maybe yoga, or Joe Wicks has started his videos back up. You might just want to play active games with your children or pets. You might want to do some training games in the garden or play hide and seek, etc. Or you might want to do some circuits in the garden if you have a garden. So ideas for connecting. This is really hard at the moment during lockdown, or when you are working back in schools, if you've got bubbles, it is really hard to actually connect with other people and find people to talk to, but there are ways of doing it at the moment. You can FaceTime your friends and family. You might want to hold Zoom parties, Zoom quizzes, Zoom bingo, anything where you're meeting up virtually as groups of friends. You might want to partake in talking therapies or sessions. These are going on virtually at the moment, so don't think just because it's lockdown that you're not able to access talking therapies. They are going on. You might want to create virtual groups, for example, book clubs. There might be other hobbies that you can do that you can get together in a group and discuss and take part in together. Or you might want to do regular virtual work team meetings focusing on wellbeing. So these are really important. As the school wellbeing service, we hold every week a meeting where we will make sure we discuss how we're all doing, how we're coping, and it's really important. It is really beneficial for you to really take stock of how you are at the moment. It really helps. And ideas for keep learning. So this can be learning a new skill. It could be doing an online course. There might be something you've always wanted to learn, but you've maybe never really had the time. Not to say that you've got lots of time at the moment, but if you're doing less social activities, it may release a little bit more time for something like that. You might want to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. So it could be anything. It may be that there's always been an exercise video that you've wanted to try, but it's always been too hard and you've put it off. So maybe doing something like that. Read non-fiction. So really get those facts, learn new knowledge, gain as much knowledge in something that you've always wanted to gain before, or maybe just something that you think that looks a bit interesting. I'll give that a go. And problem solving activities, things like crosswords, Sudoku, anything like that. It just keeps your brain ticking. This is another opportunity to do an activity. You might want to add to the previous activity. Now you've been given some examples. So if you want to give it a go, you can stop the video now. If not, you can keep going along to the next slide. You can skip to the next slide. But this is just looking at, do you have any personal preferences to one particular area? Is there something that you thought, actually, that's something I really want to give a go? Is there an area that you tend to avoid or find yourself not doing? Maybe it's to be active, for example. So it's really important to look at if there are any areas that you're not doing. Really do try and give them a go, because it's important that you're trying all of these areas in order to be as emotionally well as you can. So yeah, find your fun, find what works for you in the current limited situation, and realise that if you're not feeling okay, maybe just try and give any of these things a go, and it might make you feel a bit better. So like I said, if you don't want to give the activity a go right now, you can skip to the next slide. If you do, just give it a pause.
In previous presentations, we talk about the 5 key principles for recovery. And this just gives some examples of some actions for recovery that you can ask yourself that fit with these key principles of recovery. So if we're thinking about putting our emotional well-being first, we can ask ourselves questions such as, when I feel good, what kinds of things am I doing? When we're thinking about reaffirming school strengths and core values, we can be asking ourselves questions like, what really matters to me and what makes me passionate? If we're thinking about putting relationships front and centre of everything that we do, then we can ask ourselves, who really matters to me here? And who is here that is there for me? Who helps me? Who would I turn to? Who do I trust? Who can I talk to? If we're reaffirming safety and boundaries, then we can ask ourselves a question of, what makes me feel really safe? Or what could I do to other people in order to help them to feel safe? And what kind of routines help me to feel like I know what's expected of me, particularly in the current climate where we're facing with ongoing uncertainty? So what kinds of routines and boundaries help me to feel safe and secure? We want to acknowledge loss and change and bereavements. So we can ask ourselves questions such as, in what ways have I experienced a loss? What kind of losses have I experienced? How has this changed me? What kind of changes have gone on during this experience that we're having currently? And, have there been any kind of bereavements or losses for me in the last few weeks? So these are just ways in which you can turn the principles of recovery into questions that you can ask yourself, or you can ask somebody else if you're working with a family, or with some colleagues, or even with groups of children, young people. You can ask these questions of them too, to try and ensure that these key principles of recovery are embedded in our everyday activities, particularly when we're thinking about looking after ourselves and each other.
So this is something we want you to have a think about. Usually we talk about the importance of relationships in wellbeing and strengthening connections with other people. But obviously in the current climate, this isn't something that's easy to do. When we are working in schools at the moment, we've got our bubbles, which is why we've got our little bubbles around groups of people here. And they are a real barrier to actually making those connections and building those connections. You may have felt that actually you really weren't enjoying work as much as you used to because you just couldn't really speak to anyone or see anyone in your team. And at the moment, in terms of lockdown, this is maybe even harder. You may find it easier because you can talk to them virtually. I don't know, but just want you to have a moment. You may want to pause the video, or it might just be a thought that you come away with. Is how can, in this climate, we really try to build these connections with our colleagues and the people that we're working with and our friends and family, in order to really build those relationships and have those human connections. Yeah, it's just something that is really important to think about and try to problem solve around at the moment in order to look after your well-being.
This activity is really great for acknowledging and highlighting brilliant practice that you already have going on in your school. Quite often when we do this, schools don't seem to realise just how much good practice they've got going on. So it's really helpful to think about what ways in which your school encourage, or how do the systems promote people to connect in certain ways. So what ways do your school allow you to connect adult to adult? That could be teacher to teacher, or staff member to another person that works in the school, or it could be a parent to a person, a member of staff in the school. So how do you encourage adult to adult interaction? And how are interactions between adults to children and young people? In what ways do you offer opportunities for adults and children and young people to connect? What opportunities do children and young people have to connect to their peers and to other children and young people? And what ways are adults in the school encouraged to communicate and have opportunities to connect with the wider community, so parents and families or other agencies and services working in Thurrock? In the usual times, sometimes schools would put a big poster up in their staff room or somewhere, and over a period of a couple of weeks, people would add on examples onto this kind of sheet. Obviously, in this time, it's probably not so practical to have a piece of paper up somewhere because not everybody can get to the same places nowadays. There may be some virtual way in which you can try and collate this information, but it really often ends up being a really brilliant celebration of all the different ways in which your school provide opportunities for connections and for relationships to thrive and to strengthen. So if you wanted to stop for a couple of moments and have a go at noting down some of the things, even if it's just one thing, one example in each area, then you can pause the video now for a minute or two to do that.
Sometimes it might actually help to talk to someone that you don't know personally or who's not in your working environment. For this, we've got the School Wellbeing Service. We work with all the schools in Thurrock. You will have an assigned practitioner. This is our team. We've got Jackie, who is our team lead. We've got Tony, who is one of our senior practitioners, and myself as a senior practitioner. And we've got Karen and Faye, who are also our wellbeing practitioners. If you did want to talk to any of us at all, we do run reflective discussions. We can do these one-to-one or as groups, and we're doing them virtually currently, or you can do them over the phone. These are sessions where you have time to reflect, to offload on how you're feeling at the moment. It may be personally, emotionally, or professionally. So we do give you that space to do that. If you are interested in taking this up, you can contact your mental health lead in school and they'll be able to arrange this for you. Alternatively, you could just email our email address. It is sws@thurrock.gov.uk.
Resilience is a concept about how we can cope with life's ups and downs. It's about how do we find periods of difficulty, but then recover and strengthen ourselves and keep moving forwards. And that's our resilience. And some research has looked at 3 internal resources where our resilience kind of resides from and are kind of our building blocks. We need to have elements from all 3 of these internal sources in order for us to grow and foster our resilience. So we have the idea of I have certain sets of things, these internal resources. I am, in my person, these kinds of internal resources, and that I can do these kinds of skills and have these internal resources to be able to do certain things. So the kinds of things I might have, maybe people around me who I can trust and who care for me. I have people who maybe set limits for me and boundaries for me. I have people who will model things for me and be role models for people that I want to look up to. I have people who encourage me to support me, but also to let me go out there and try things on my own. And I may have people who I can turn to when I'm sick or I'm well, or I'm in danger, or I need to find something out. So I have those things. When I'm thinking about the internal resources about how I am, I may be a person that people can like and respect. I may be glad to do things for other people. I may be wanting to help others, demonstrate some empathy and some selflessness. I am respectful of myself and other people, and I take responsibility for things I do. And I would like to be thinking about and focused on things that are hopeful, to have beliefs and faith, and to trust that the world is generally a nice place to be. So these are things I am in myself and in my person. And then these are things that I can do. So whether I can communicate my feelings, I can problem solve, regulate my emotions, whether I can control my impulses, whether I can suss out the feelings of other people, figure out, take cues from other people about whether I need to talk with them, support them, leave them alone. So thinking about what other people might be thinking and feeling. I might be able to find someone to help me when I need it, and we'll have relationships that can help me if I'm needing some support. But I can also be autonomous and be independent too. So these are skills that I have, things that I can do. And in order to get a balance of being resilient and being emotionally healthy, you need to have some elements of all 3. So it may be that we're cared for and trusted, so we have the I have. But if we don't have any inner strength, the I ams, or we don't have any social skills, the I cans, then we'll struggle to be resilient. We may have great self-esteem, but if I'm not able to communicate to others or problem solve, then I might struggle to be resilient. I may be really expressive verbally, but without empathy, the I ams, and with no connections to seek support from other people, then I will struggle to cope with difficulties in my life. So we need to have elements. We don't need to have all of everything of all of those, because that would be some kind of unicorn person. But we need to have some elements of a balance of 3 areas there. So following on from the previous slide, where I was talking you through these different internal resources, so things that you have in your life, things that you are as a person. So these might be some of your virtues or some of your characteristics, maybe your inner strengths, your signature strengths. It might be skills and things that you can do. So have a think. If you'd like to do this activity, think about the different internal resources that you have for being resilient, and checking in whether or not you think you have got a couple of things in each of those internal resources. And if there's a particular area of inner resources that you think you might sort of struggle to think about a bit more, that could be an area in which you could look back on the previous slide and see which areas you might be able to develop further for yourself, or things that you might already know that you're working on already. We're all works in progress, aren't we? And we have to remember that we only have to be good enough. And hopefully, if we all support one another and develop good relationships and connections with people, those relationships are so key in order for us to be emotionally healthy. That we will be able to develop and strengthen our resilience as we go. So if you want to just take some time to either note that down or just to reflect in your mind, then you can pause the video now. Whereas previously we've just been looking at our individual selves and how we can think about our own levels of resilience in order to be able to cope with life's dramas and life's ups and downs and things that are thrown in our way and challenge us. This slide looks at levels of support that schools' environments can provide. And it goes up like a triangle. So the green section there you can see is what all staff would probably be able to access. And I know that all schools and colleges will differ slightly in terms of things that you have in place, or you might call them something different to what's on the screen. But you should generally have, for all staff in schools and colleges, various things that any member of staff can access that will help to support them with their emotional well-being and mental health. And then some staff may need additional, or they may access additional support. This may be because of the role that they have in school. So some school staff, particularly those who are working with and supporting children, young people with social, emotional, mental health difficulties, or who have vulnerable life experiences, those staff may need extra support in order to minimise the impact that kind of work might have on their well-being. So there may be some things there in that yellow section that some staff, not all staff, receive or take part in. And then at the top, there'll be a smaller amount of staff who may need support from external avenues from the school staff. So it may be that they might need some kind of employee assistance, some kind of crisis support from other services outside, or they might be accessing occupational health. So this gives you an idea just in terms of the kinds of things, the kind of framework you might have for thinking about different levels of support that you access. And as a member of staff, thinking about what level of support have you experienced in the past and what's been useful, and what would you recommend to somebody else if you came across a colleague who was struggling or not doing very well with their emotional well-being, mental health. What kinds of things would you suggest to them to seek out? And do they know where they can seek that support out?
If you have the time, we'd really like you to stop and take a look at these videos. They explain how our bodies and brains respond to stress and how to regulate these so that they don't affect our behaviours. So if you do have the time, please pause this video and do watch the video links. You can access these on the PowerPoint that will be uploaded alongside this webinar. When you're feeling emotional, stressed, dysregulated, or overwhelmed, what helps you feel better again? So again, this is another activity. If you have time, please stop and think about this question to answer it. If not, you can skip this and maybe just take a look at the risk factors and protective factors and tipping the balance in the concept index at a later time. So when we're feeling stressed or maybe struggling emotionally, we will usually use some sort of coping strategy to make ourselves feel better. Whether it be a glass of wine at the end of the day or going for a walk, etc. Some of these are helpful strategies and some of them we will call unhelpful. The reason we call them unhelpful strategies is because they might help us in the short term, but they're not going to help us in the long term. And sometimes they can actually make our well-being and situation worse in the long run and our health. So some of our helpful strategies might be things like meditation, yoga, mindfulness, an active lifestyle. Having an active lifestyle, it actually burns off some of the adrenaline that's built up during anxiety, and it releases lots of feel-good hormones as well. It might be a creative activity where you can express yourself, like creative writing or dance or even acting, anything like that. It may be that you like to play music. It may be that you want to connect with other people. Laughter, that's a great way to make you feel better as well. That releases lots of feel-good hormones. It could be giving yourself time to relax. We've got a little picture of a bubble bath down the bottom there. Or it could be talking to your friends and pets. You know, pets are great for making you feel better. Some of the more unhelpful strategies could be, like I said, having that glass of wine at the end of the evening, smoking a cigarette if you're stressed, just blowing off some steam by getting really angry. But the problem is, these things are very short term, as I explained. They will keep happening and happening. They don't get to the root of the problem, they don't solve the problem, and they don't help you recognise what's really going on for you. So if you are doing any of those unhelpful coping strategies, it might be time to just start thinking about how can you change those up? How can you swap those for some more helpful coping strategies? So a lot of the helpful coping strategies, you're looking at your 5 ways to wellbeing. Can you swap any of your unhelpful methods for the more helpful strategies?
Now we're at the end of this session, it's a good time just to check in with yourself and to see how you're feeling now. As we said in the beginning, the content of the WER programme can impact on how we're thinking or feeling and how it relates to us in our everyday lives. If you've been affected by anything you have read or heard about today, please seek support, either from your own support network, and there's some ideas listed on the slide here, or from additional support networks, whether that's local services or national sources of support.
As a result of watching this webinar, if you feel like you could really benefit from seeking some emotional support or some therapeutic support, or actually if you'd just like someone to blow off a little bit of steam to, or if you'd like some advice even on maybe someone you know, or just more advice on wellbeing, you can contact our Thurrock COVID-19 Wellbeing Support Line. This is run by the Educational Psychology Service and the School Wellbeing Service. It is for parents, young people, school staff during the outbreak of coronavirus. So it's just looking at giving you any form of support around wellbeing or advice around wellbeing that you might require. The phone number is 01375 652 537, or you could contact 01375 652 558. You'll be asked to leave a voicemail message and someone from the team will get back to you. Alternatively, you could email the helpline at sws@thurrock.gov.uk. If you didn't want to use that as an option, we do have Thurrock and Brentwood Mind. They offer lots of support in terms of mental health and wellbeing. You may be able to access therapeutic support. We also have Inclusion Thurrock. This is for adults who may require therapeutic support also. And I know that they are really, really on board in terms of helping school staff at the moment. So if you would like someone to talk to for regular sessions, they would be good ideas to contact as well. If you want to learn a bit more about what options there are to you in terms of support locally in Thurrock, do make sure you watch our webinar on accessing local support, because it looks at what's available in regards to the Thurrock Thrive model, and it looks at what support might be appropriate for what kinds of needs.